Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart Starr. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't show with no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Good evening and welcome into Lombardi's Legends podcast. I am Wags and joining me as always is Dane, and we are in a bye week recording here on Thursday night after the Monday night football game with the Packers falling to the Raiders 17-13 in Las Vegas. So Packers fall now to 2-3. And so tonight, I think what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick recap of that game since we were a little bit off of our normal schedule, but also wanted to just get into some of our season to date observations and a look ahead at the remainder of the season and kind of what we can expect. So Dane, first of all, welcome in here tonight. How are you doing this evening?
Doing great, buddy. I'm doing great. I mean, as good as I'm gonna be after the Packers, drop another game. Packers are 2-3 now on the year. I will tell you though, buddy, what a good time for a bye week. Over the years always question, would it be good to have a late bye week, an early bye week? I'm so glad the bye is right now. The Packers have some injuries. The offense looks disjointed. And I just can't think of a better time to try to get some guys on the same page. So I'm doing all right. Wish we were in a better situation here. But excited to talk to you tonight about some of this Raiders game, but really also about looking ahead, where we think we're at, where we think we maybe can go as a team for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Dane. So just to do a quick look back at this game, it seems like a pattern is emerging, which isn't necessarily a good one with the defense, where we're good on odd weeks. So weeks 1, 3, and 5, the defense seemed to do pretty well and held the Raiders really to 14 points, considering that one interception from Jordan Love put the Raiders right in scoring range, and we're able to hold them to that field goal. So pretty good overall performance. So I don't know that we might have a few observations to touch on with the defense, but I think let's start on the offense side of the ball, because last week, certainly it was Joe Barry and the defense that was under crosshairs from you and a lot of other Packer fans and myself as well. But Dane, offensive struggles so far this year, ever since really after the first 7 quarters, that Bears game and then the first 3 quarters of the Falcons game, just really inconsistent on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of struggles, and it seemed to be even worse against this Raiders team that you had said you didn't have a lot of concerns with in terms of the guys that we were facing on that defense. But not to take any credit away, Max Crosby had a huge game, but that was your number one concern coming into the week, and it didn't seem like this offense had any rhythm or any answer for that guy, or any ability to get any rhythm or anything going on at all against this Raiders team.
You're right. I mean, and it, it's so cliche, but still it's true. It starts up front. It always starts up front, offensively and defensively. If you can set the tone at the line of scrimmage, you can win football games. And Wags, we talk about the offensive struggles, and they're plentiful. And that's kind of the concern, is it's not one thing at this point that we're isolating, saying if we can just do better at this, we can do better at a lot of things. But let's start with the offensive line. Decimated by injuries. David Bakhtiari, of course, we know, only able to play 1 game. He's done for the year. A lot of other guys. Elton Jenkins came back super early from the MCL injury, and and toughed it out. And I thought actually played fairly well despite all the injury. But John Runyon Jr. has been just a warrior, but he's been injured as well. Zach Tom also running into injury issues. And listen, these are not excuses. It's just the reality right now that the Packers are dealing with, is that they're dealing with some inexperience along the offensive line, not a very cohesive unit across the offensive line, and a fair number of injuries. And Wags, what does that equal? That equals Max Crosby being absolutely dynamic against the Packers. The Packers could not get the run game really going, and forcing then Jordan Love and company into some obvious passing situations, and there was no answer for him. And at one point, Wags, we saw Crosby go from one side of the line all the way across the other side of the line. Our buddy Goppy mentioned it. I don't think he was even touched and was able to, get some pressure there. It was pretty remarkable. So really, I mean, that's the identifying issue. There's a number of other issues across this offense, but starting there and coaching as well, the play calling. I've been critical of Joe Barry a ton, and I think I'm in good company with that. But over the last couple of weeks, offensively, it just has not been inspired football. It hasn't been very creative football. I feel like they've put Jordan Love oftentimes more in the box almost, instead of adding tools to his tool belt, and maybe some of that is starting up with the offensive line. But I'm extremely disappointed with the play calling and the offensive approach over the last couple of weeks as well. I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around, and some with the players, but man, the coaching staff right now, and I am a Matt LaFleur guy. I'm not going to lie, but I am super disappointed in the scheme, the offense, and maybe it's time to just get back to basics, because they can't run the ball, having trouble now passing the ball, and the offensive line is in disarray. So that's not a great place to be 5 weeks into the season.
Yeah. And it was interesting. You mentioned Crosby and what he was doing in the pass rush. Honestly, I thought he was almost more disruptive in the run game, especially early in the game. Just in watching some of the All-22 film, Dane, and not to get into a deep dive breakdown, but just a quick observation. One of the things that stood out, just in charting the first 3 series for the Packers on the offensive side of the ball, every time Packers were in 12 personnel in the first couple of series and did late motion with DeGuara tight end, they were running the ball. And the Raiders, Crosby, were pinching down hard on that. And so that was an indicator. So clearly they were picking something up on film. And if it's that obvious, what do? You need to make some adjustments. Now, to give the coaching staff credit, second series, they came out and they were showing those looks, late motion, and doing some play action. And that was probably their most successful offensive series of the game. If I'm being quite honest with you, we had play action pass on first down in that second series. Then they go into, after they pick up the first down, they do another play action with the bootleg to Jordan Love on the weak side. Raiders were pinching down. So they made some adjustments, but then starting in the third series, they were really almost getting out of motion altogether, and things just started to become really discombobulated. So it's like they ran out of moves for what to do on the offensive side. And I know that there's a lot of talk about the play calls, and rightly so. I was watching the Manning cast, and they were making a lot of observations. Is Jordan Love being transparent or direct enough with Coach LaFleur and his offensive coaching staff about what plays really he's comfortable with at this point in time? Or are they getting into situations after a few series, they're charted, and it seems like they're a couple steps behind. And Dane, I agree with you on the coaching, the play calling. This almost seemed like an overcorrection by the Packers to try to get that run game going. And it's almost like the Raiders decided this is what they're going to try to do, and we're going to be ready for it. And then once they made that initial round of adjustments, they were almost out of chess moves to make at that point. And that's how you get a result like what we saw on the offensive side of the ball in this game. And short of a Rudy Ford interception to start off the second half, I'm not sure the Packers get more than 6 points in this game.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, Wags. I couldn't agree more with you. And, a lot has been made of, is Jordan Love the guy? Is he not the guy? Right. Now, that's an obvious thing, right? That's going to, I think, drive clicks and talk radio and all that. I'm of the opinion it's still too early to tell. Where are we at with Jordan? But and this isn't to make excuses, but with all the chaos around him right now, I don't know what else we can expect other than, some interceptions. And I mean, he was running for his life, Wags, a lot of that game. And listen, there's some issue there too. He's missed some deep balls. He hasn't been good. His completion percentage isn't very good. That being said, he's also shown flashes, right, over this 5 weeks, and way more flashes than honestly I was even anticipating early in the year. And maybe that's where my frustration comes in at kind of this bye week perspective. Is I was really pleased with how he's handled some adversity, stepped up, made some plays in some big moments early in the season, and it almost felt like the coaching staff was trying to take the ball out of his hands. He wasn't attacking the downfield at all with his throws until they were kind of forced to do it late in the game. And it's a damn shame. Right now, he hasn't had his playmakers like Aaron Jones, and of course, Christian Watson's been hurt as well. Again, not an excuse, just a reality. All the more reason I'm excited for this bye week to kind of come by right now. Hopefully, the Packers can kind of regroup, resettle, refocus, and maybe find some things, that maybe Jordan is comfortable doing, because I do think that playing within an offense, finding a little bit of rhythm, he can be a very, very good quarterback for this team, and he can win some football games. But the way it is right now, and if he's running for his life for the rest of the season, this is going to be, it's impossible for any quarterback, especially a young quarterback, to develop when, he's not getting kind of the time and the protection that he needs.
What do you think we can do with that offensive line? Because, I mean, we talked about Bakhtiari, but after week 2, we were sitting here saying, you know what, is it time to move on from Bakhtiari? We didn't know necessarily the full extent of the newest injury at that point when we were talking. And frankly, this was an offensive line that we thought would be the strength of the offense. And one of the better offensive lines in the league. And that wasn't contingent just on David Bakhtiari. So it's been really disappointing, I think, the performance that we've gotten out of these guys, because you can say that they weren't 100%, that they're banged up. And I agree with all of that, Dane. But short of Bakhtiari, the 5 guys that we had in there are the guys that we would have anticipated rolling with. We didn't have any other quote unquote backups in the game at this point in time. I guess you could consider Rasheed Walker a backup, but he's the starter now for the rest of the season, unless he gets hurt or if he gets replaced by someone else. So I think, I'd like to hear from you. What would you anticipate? Are there going to be any more changes, you think? I mean, you got to go with the best guys you have. So I'm not sure that there's really a lot of answers other than just to improve performance. Are there some things schematically that we could be doing that would help these guys up front to get better rhythm and play to the strengths of the 5 guys we have? Do we need to move Zach Tom from tackle inside to shore things up? I'm just kind of open to anything at this point, because from a talent perspective, I think these guys could still form a very good offensive line with and you throw Nijman into the mix, even the 6 guys that we have short of Bakhtiari. So what's going on, and what do you think you would like to see, or what do you think the coaching staff might be looking at to try to address this? Because this is very unlike the Packers to not have a really solid offensive line up front, especially with Stenavich, the offensive coordinator. That's been his calling card in the entire time he's been in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really, really great question, Wags. And, so I'm a big proponent, I think I've always have been, of getting your best 5 out there and not worrying about the continuity. I mean, at this point, this is an offensive line that there is no continuity, right? At least for last week, it was kind of a mess. So I think Yosh Nijman is one of the top 5 guys on the offensive line. So that the Packers have available. I think the consistent weak link of this offensive line, and I hate to say it, but has been Josh Myers at center. And I think that long term is Zach Tom, maybe offensive tackle. Yeah, I mean, I think he can play anywhere. He's kind of an Elton Jenkins type. But for this season, if you told me going into this week, we had Yosh Nijman at left tackle, Rasheed Walker at right tackle, and then we had Elton Jenkins at left guard. We had John Runyan Jr. at right guard, and Zach Tom moved inside to center. I think that's the best 5 for this unit going forward. I know that's not probably popular. I think it's fairly unlikely that that's what the Packers do. But from the armchair quarterback perspective, I like that 5. I think that I think also Zach Tom is definitely dealing with an injury right now. He's not 100% and maybe playing more on the inside and having a little bit of help would maybe help him as he's working through an injury. So I think that there's a couple of reasons why I really like that idea overall. But short of that, we've got to make sure that just because guys can play, are they as good as maybe, somebody like a Yosh Nijman who can come in until guys get healthy, right? So end of the day, I have a lot of admiration for the guys that are getting out there and getting after it, but how hurt are they? How much is the injury actually impacting them, right? But at the end of the day, man, give me Yosh and Walker on the corners and find Zach Tom in the center. And I think that this is a very, very good offensive line coming out of the bye week. I'll be curious to see what the Packers do, though, to try to address these concerns, or if they keep the status quo. But I'm concerned the status quo isn't going to be good enough as it currently stands.
Yeah, I think, okay, I agree with that. It's funny you said that 5 because you're reading my mind. That's exactly how I would have gone. I think, another option certainly is to think about it one way or another. I just don't see how Yosh Nijman is not one of our top 5 offensive linemen. I'm going to keep beating that drum. It's not just because he's been on this, show a couple of times. I mean, we like the guy clearly, or I'm not going to be afraid to admit I'm a bit biased in that perspective, but he's gone out there and performed. His first couple of starts, he's going against Bosa in San Francisco. He's going against Watt in Pittsburgh. So he held up. And he played the rest of that season 2 years ago in difficult circumstances. So I think if you want to get your best 5 out there, you're going to your point, not have to worry about continuity and throw that out the window and figure out how to get that done. I think I will say, I know you're a big Rasheed Walker fan. He had a tough week this week.
He did.
And one of the things that he's going to need to really focus on is going back and looking at tape. He's a little bit too straight up. And he's getting in against the Raiders, he was getting bully blocked quite a bit. So he's got to work on getting his hips sunk a little bit better when he's in those pass pro situations and letting guys come to him and having that solid base because he got steamrolled a few times and that's making things really difficult for Jordan Love. So not to single Walker out because I think he has a bright future, but that's something that he's going to need to shore up. I think certainly Zach Tom, similar situation. He was reaching for some guys instead of getting that base and trusting, and that could have to do with the injury and not feeling 100% and not maybe feeling quite as mobile as he typically would be out on there at the edge. But that's all the more reason to kick him inside. Exactly. I think at this point, that's he might just be not only more comfortable there right now if he's dealing with a nagging injury, but I think that improves the offensive line as a whole. One other thing I think we would be we can't fail to mention is this young tight end group has been struggling with blocking as well. And I hate to throw that out there because I have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to be strong contributors and continue to develop. But we know tight end is a very, very difficult position for young players to learn in the NFL. And I think the reality of the situation is you're going out there, you're expecting them to do an awful lot. That's both in the run game and go out there as pass catchers. They've got to be so multidimensional in an offense like this. And that's just a very, very challenging job. And unfortunately, I think with some of the tells that we saw schematically, and clearly the Raiders were picking up on, now you're in situations where we've got Dontavian Wicks as a wide receiver as well, needing to crack block on a defensive lineman and just getting blown up. I'm thinking of the play when they did end around with Christian Watson, loss of 5. They had a nice drive going. So that they had to settle for the field goal in that drive early in the their second series in the first quarter. Musgrave and DeGuara were having some challenges with some of the, the pinch downs that the Raiders were doing. They were called on to block, and frankly, they were just out of position to be able to do that.
Mhm.
And those plays were getting completely blown up. So I don't necessarily completely blame those guys, because some of that scheme and the opposing players and coaching staff picking up on some certain indicators that the Packers are doing. So they've got to fix that, number one. But the fact is that I think we underrate what guys like Mercedes Lewis and even Bob Tunyon and Alan Lazard were doing out there as blockers in the run game. For all the deficiencies they had as pass receivers, maybe not Lazard as much, but definitely not dynamic as pass receivers. It's probably not out of line that we should expect that we would struggle a little bit with some of our edge blocking, and that's clearly something that's impacting the run game as well.
It's a good point. It's a good point. And I mean, all the more reason we're talking about this and running the ball. I mean, I think that's one of Yosh Nijman's strong points. And not to belabor this, but I mean, like, it's just, we need to get something going. We need to shake it up a little bit. And I see opportunity. And when we see opportunity, I just feel like we need to be able to take it, because the run game has been a huge problem. And going into the year, I really thought the strong point of this team was going to be, they're going to be able to run the ball and open it up for Jordan Love to be able to, find some open guys and make some plays. And unfortunately, through the first 5 weeks, Wags, what we've constantly seen is like, Jordan, you're going to have to drop back a bunch and throw the ball. And it's just not fair, and it's not realistic to a young quarterback and a very young wide receiver group that they're not able to run the ball at all. And it doesn't help Aaron Jones has been out. I think Aaron Jones has had 17 touches through 5 weeks. Of course, he's had some injuries to contribute to that. But if the Packers can't get the run game going, it's going to be extremely detrimental to not only the season, but also, I think, big picture, what we're looking at here is trying to see, do we have a guy in Jordan Love? And it's really hard to really grade a guy when there's no run game to speak of, and the offensive line's crumbling around him, and he's got, pretty inexperienced pass catchers, and now you're expecting him to go down there and march down the field. It's a really hard spot to put Jordan in. And at the end of the day, the NFL is a quarterback driven league. So I keep going back to Jordan Love because, in 24, 25, we're only going as far as, in my opinion, is what the quarterback can really do, right? You need to have a good team around them, but it sure as hell helps to have a stud quarterback. And I want to see what Jordan has. And not to say that he can't elevate guys around him, but right now it's just really tough sledding. And the coaching staff, I don't think, has put him in the best position to succeed either. And it's frustrating to watch from my position.
One thing, and I don't know what you would think about this, Dane, but one thing I think might be beneficial that could be a wrinkle is, and Coach LaFleur even acknowledged this after the game, is they didn't get Jordan Love out on the edges and kind of moving outside the pocket as much as he would have liked to in this last game. And I think that's another adjustment, that if you're not going to get teams to respect the run game with your traditional running backs, and you can't stretch the field horizontally with that, and they're not respecting play action, because frankly that's not really going anywhere either, then maybe it's in Jordan Love is sitting in the pocket being targeted. Maybe the next move is, let's roll the pocket, get him out of the pocket, because one of the things that he has been successful at, and which is not surprising, is using his legs and throughout the first 5 weeks of the season. I don't think Jordan Love's all of a sudden going to turn into a dynamic running quarterback, but if you can give him some looks, I think that can, while that can reduce the number of progressions that you can make because you're cutting off half the field. One of the things that I think was happening was he was almost going through his progressions too far, and not just getting rid of the ball to the get the simple route, get rid of the ball, let your receiver make a play. Not every play may go for 10, 15, 20 yards. Get the ball out to your receiver on your first or second read when it's there. And if they make a guy miss, maybe it's a 7-yard to 10-yard pickup. Otherwise, it's a 3-yard gain. oh, fine. You go back to the huddle and you get the next play. At least you're at 2nd and 7 instead of 2nd and 10 in that situation, or worse if you get a sack. And then I think the other thing is that enables him to get a better view of what's in front of him as a young quarterback. So if that pass is not there, you can either throw it away or tuck and run and just try to make the most of what you can out of that play just to get some positive yardage. So you can't just roll out every time you're going to do a pass play. I understand that, Dane, but I think that would be another thing that they could try to implement a little bit more, rather than just trying to use the motion looks to try to get the defense to take someone out of the box or make an adjustment, which doesn't seem like is happening anyway, based on the unsuccessful nature of what they've been able to do in the run game.
Wags, I'm curious question. I'm not fishing for an answer one way or another, but it's something that I posed during the game on our social channels. Was, did this game, from a coaching perspective, offensively, did it feel less aggressive than in previous weeks to you? Because I watched it, and of course the reason I posed the question is, and I go back to I forget what series exactly it was. Packers are near the goal line. First 2 plays are just runs up the middle with AJ Dillon, goes nowhere, and then the Packers end up having to kick a field goal. And I feel like in the first couple of weeks, Jordan Love, maybe they do a little RPO there, right? And they give Jordan a chance. And for whatever reason, it seemed like in this week, from my perspective, they were almost like scared to give Jordan the ball. And I get it. He threw 3 picks. I get all that. But independent of that, the coaching around it, it seemed like they were really cautious. So I'm kind of curious, did you feel like they were cautious, or am I just seeing things there?
Yeah, I kind of felt that way at times in the game, but to be honest, going back and watching the film, I think what they were trying to do, clearly they wanted to get the run game going. And I understand that. And we've been asking for that. So it's hard to be mad about that, is to get some rhythm and get the run game going. First couple series, they quite honestly, even though they only came away with 3 points, I think they did a pretty good job of that. Opening the second half, Rudy Ford gets the interception. We go down and get the touchdown. And it's one of those things where it's great that they were able to, run, get it in the end zone. AJ Dillon gets the touchdown. On the other hand, it almost feels like it was a silver bullet, because then on the next series we're in a situation where we run in that red zone, instead of really giving Jordan Love any opportunities to throw the ball into the end zone, and the Raiders stuffed it. Now that can happen, I understand that, and that's just a microcosm of I think what you're talking about, Dane, in this game, but in general I agree. Now I think what's interesting is I thought the return of Christian Watson to fuller strength and more snaps was going to open things up around the middle of the field for Musgrave and Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs in the pass game. And it seems like that didn't happen at all. And I don't know if it's because, teams and Raiders and teams in general are just looking at this and saying, you know what? We haven't seen Jordan Love complete a vertical pass yet. Why are we going to be concerned about this? Let's see him actually do it before we're going to make the adjustment of rolling guys back into deeper coverage. Christian Watson might beat our guy, but it doesn't seem like they've been able to find that connection. So why are we going to be terribly concerned about that? Now, I don't know if that's actually what's happening, but there's not a lot of room to operate in that first 10 to 15 yards in the middle of the field, like I was seeing in the first couple of weeks. So it'll be interesting to see if there's some things that can open that back up, because we really need those latter 3 guys I mentioned to cook, because it's all so complementary. Everything comes together. But if you're play calling and everything's underneath, run underneath passes, throwing into the flat, that gets really easy to defend, regardless of whether that's a cause and effect, or if that's just shooting yourself in the foot to spite yourself because you're not taking any shots or taking any opportunities. So I don't know, Dane, if it was an adjustment thing, but I do think that the game plan was a little bit out of order when the Raiders were able to throw them off early on with the run looks that they were giving them. And then the Packers just never really had an answer the further they had to go down in the playbook. So, this is a lot of scheme stuff to me. And unfortunately, when Coach LaFleur, this is not a this year problem. We've seen the offense has been inconsistent the last couple of years. Even with Aaron Rodgers, we saw a lot of inconsistency the last couple of seasons at times. So, this has been something that I think has been a 3-year problem for Coach LaFleur and the offensive coaching staff. So quite honestly, I don't know why we would expect it to be any different this year with a bunch of younger players and new guys on this roster.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it's going to be, I'm really eager, and honestly, it sounds silly. I'm a little excited to see how this team reacts after the bye week, because this is a chance for them to regroup and try to figure some stuff out. Anything else on the offensive side that you want to touch on before we talk defense?
That's a really good call out, Dane. And I got to say, if they can't figure things out against a defense that gave up 70 points this season in the Denver Broncos and just gave up 31 points to a meager New York Jets offense team, then I don't know where you turn from there.
Right.
So not only self-scouting, getting some things figured out schematically, but just who they're playing. So, when they come back from the bye, we better see a good performance. Now, whether that means all 3 phases or not against the Broncos, we'll have to see. But clearly, this is a team coming up that you would expect to have some success on offensively, because everyone is having success on them offensively.
It's great. You're right, Wags. That's a really good point. And it's perfect timing, right? And the Packers do have a couple weeks to scheme for this Denver Broncos defense. If they come out and lay an egg against Denver, then we're going to have a pretty somber podcast, I think, after that one.
Yeah. So Dane, I guess I don't have a ton of thoughts on defense, and I don't really need to get in the recap. I thought they played pretty well, and good to see they responded.
Yeah.
So I guess the big picture question I have for you is, what can we do to be more consistent on the defensive side of the ball for the rest of this season? Because I'm just sick of every other week wanting to fire Joe Barry, and it seems like this defense can't stop anyone. And then the next week, frankly, they look competent some weeks. So, I mean, what can we do? I know it's not easy to stop every team that you face. We've got some really good offenses and quarterbacks in this league, but based on who they've played so far, Dane, I would have loved to see more consistency from this defense. So, what did you see in this Raiders game that you think maybe could give us a shred of hope that this defense could carry us moving forward?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I do think that they more or less limited the run game of the Raiders, and that's huge. We've talked a little bit about it. I mean, that is a weak point of this Packers team traditionally, but we've said, what would we like to see this defense do? It's maybe double down on the defensive efforts and try to make a defensive stop running the ball, and then let some of your playmakers on the back end, where I think a lot of the talent lies on this defense, let those playmakers go make plays against big time players. And so if we can continue to stop the run, and I understand it is the NFL, right? They're trying, the opposing team's always trying to win too, and you're going to have good weeks, you're going to have bad weeks. I don't care who you are. But if this Packers team, I'm encouraged by the physicality of the defense in stretches here. And some guys really, really have popped out. And I'm curious to see what happens with Quay Walker and the injury there. But even Wags, I'll tell you what, Eric Wilson stepped up and had a really nice game. I thought overall played some really good hard-nosed football. The defensive line, Kenny Clark, consistently, right? If they're able to stop the run, if the Packers can get off the field and keep Kenny Clark at around 40 snaps a game, he's all that much better. So when we start to look at consistency, I do think it really does start with doubling down the efforts to stop the run. The more often that we're able to keep the running back under 70 or so yards, the better opportunities we're going to have. And I mean, hell, even against Davante Adams, Wags, I was pretty impressed overall with how the Packers, we've seen Davante Adams, even in his Raiders time here, carve up teams, doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And largely, I mean, if you told me that Tay did what he did, I'd be like, hey, that's a pretty damn good effort by the defense. So I mean, I thought that the guys overall really came to play defensively. They stuck their necks out there. I mentioned the physicality. I mean, Rashawn Gary getting off that pitch count, I think, and had another nice sack. Really, really coming into his own as a pass rusher, but also I thought played the run really well when he was given the opportunity there. And Rudy Ford, we talked about on our social media this week, but Rudy Ford had a really good game again. Not only the interception, which makes all the highlights, but Wags, the tackles, the stops. Really physical guy. And when you start to see your safeties go up there and fly around and make plays, I mean, it's really, I think guys feed off of that. So was really pleased with that. So as we go forward, I'm excited to get Eric Stokes back in the building. I think we're getting close to a return of him. I'm excited to continue to see high level play from Jair and from Rasul Douglas and really stop the run and let our guys on the back end make some plays. I truly believe that is a recipe for success because we have the talent on this team to be successful defensively.
Yeah. With Tay, I mean, what can you say? Number one cornerback Preston Smith holds him for 1 catch and 6 yards. So
yeah, I like that.
That's always gonna lead to success, right, Dane? So,
yeah.
One of the things with the defense, one of the things I do like that what they're doing, they're sticking to, and I don't know if this is just because of its injury and like Rashawn being on a pitch count, and you go on down the line, but it seems like they have been really making a conscious effort to get some of the young guys snaps. Now, I know obviously in middle linebacker, McDuffie and Wilson wouldn't normally get any snaps because if you've got Quay Walker out there and Devondre Campbell, those guys are going to get all the snaps at that position. But you look at the defensive line, Carl Brooks, Colby Wooden, they're not getting a ton of snaps, but they're getting rotated in. And I think that not only helps them develop, it keeps the rest of the guys up front fresher. We're seeing guys like Enagbare and Lucas Van Ness, our first round pick, getting more snaps. And again, part of that could be Rashawn Gary getting full health, but I think that's giving them more opportunities to show that. And I think they both made some nice plays out there again this week. So sometimes this isn't a defense is not the side of the ball where you want to just line up 11 and say go. I think defense is really, you want to have 15 to 16 guys that are going to be involved throughout the game. And I think we might even see that in the DB group with Eric Stokes because he's going to be out on the field, Dane. So I'm not suggesting that they're going to pull Jair Alexander or Rasul Douglas for a bunch of snaps just to get Eric Stokes out on the football field. But I think there's different ways that you can keep these guys fresh and get more guys involved on the defensive side. That enables them to really be going full tilt when they're out there on the field and can maintain their physicality. Hopefully over the course of a game and a season, you see less sloppy missed tackles, penalties, holdings, things of that nature that can happen when defense starts to get worn down a little bit. So if they can win more consistently, like you said this week that they did against the run game, even if it means having to sell out a little bit and be a little bit more aggressive, Quay Walker really shooting the gaps when he was in there this week, that can make you susceptible to some play action. But this is what we've been asking for, Dane, because I think overall we've got the defensive backs to be able to read and react, and we might give up some plays underneath in some of those play action situations, but we might also win up front and get to the quarterback before they can get rid of the ball, or I think we've got the DBs that are going to be able to make shifts and adjustments against most offenses in the league if they want to do those a predominant number of times. So it's weird. Here we are. It's like I don't want to say super confident in this defense moving forward, but I definitely feel more confident in the defensive side of the ball at this point moving forward for the rest of the season than I do on the offensive side of the ball. I don't want to overreact to the offense. Aaron Jones really hasn't been out there at all, aside from 3/4 of the first game. So let's see what it looks like when he's back out there. But But if this defense can hold teams to 15 to 18 points most weeks, we're going to be in games. Now, will we win a bunch of them? That remains to be seen. But if nothing else, we'll be in games, and we'll have an opportunity in the fourth quarter to pull some of these out.
Well, Wags, and I love that, and there is reason for real optimism on this defense, right? Because we've seen improvement, we've seen some really good play. You mentioned some of the guys that are rotating in. I love what Enagbare was able to do yet again this week. I really like his game. The Packers found a guy in him, so I'm really enjoying that. But Devondre Campbell has been injured, and I expect him to be coming back sooner rather than later. Eric Stokes coming back as well. I mean, those are two guys, Wags, that are real impact football players for this defense. So you get those guys back and flowing. It's not a bad sign, right? To start to see some of those kind of guys that can really make some plays there. And I wanted to ask you a question. You mentioned Karl Brooks, the rookie defensive lineman. He sticks out to me as a rookie. He's one of those rookies that's just like, every time he's out there, man, I'm like, look at 94 doing what 94 is doing. What do you make of him? Because you mentioned him and he is getting some run on that defensive line, but holy smokes, he's been as impressive as any rookie that I can think of on this Packers team so far. He seems level-headed, mature guy, but also just busts heads. So what, floor is yours. Karl Brooks, what's your read after 5 weeks?
Yeah, quite honestly, I think he's been more impactful than Devonte Wyatt has this season, which is not to single out Devonte Wyatt, but we were expecting big things from him this season. He was the impact guy early in camp on the defensive side of the ball, and he just hasn't really been that impactful. Now, is he doing his job and soaking up blocks? Yes, to a degree, but he's not really been a playmaker. Karl Brooks, in the snaps that he's been out there, has found more opportunities to be a playmaker. Now, there's more to being a defensive lineman than, getting a sack or, shedding a block and getting a tackle for a loss. Those are great things when they happen. But if you do that too much, you might also be finding yourself out of position more often than not. That's not what I'm seeing from Karl Brooks. This is a guy that's winning up front and in not is a ton of snaps either. So it'll be interesting. We were critical of defensive line, and the defensive coaching staff. I think it's really positional coaches that make the decisions for how many snaps these guys are getting. Frankly, last year for Dean Lowry getting too many snaps, Tyler Lancaster getting too many snaps in past seasons, and we had young guys behind them that we weren't necessarily positive were going to outplay those guys, but based on the performance, we really felt like should have been getting more opportunities. Well, now we've got a situation where these young guys in Brooks and Wooden are actually getting more opportunities. But in Brooks's case, I agree. I think he's actually to some degree outperforming Devonte Wyatt, and I know TJ Slayton's a different position. Certainly Kenny Clark. But I wouldn't mind seeing Karl Brooks getting some more snaps. So it's going to be interesting to track and watch how that goes, because this was a performance-based league, and quite honestly, I don't care where you were drafted or if you're a starter to start the season or where you're at. From a snap count perspective, I want the best guys to get out there more often than not. And if Karl Brooks is one of those guys, let's run him out there. That doesn't mean I'm giving up on Devonte Wyatt. It doesn't mean that I am not hopeful that all of these guys can be contributing in the stretch run of this season, because if those things happen, then it almost doesn't matter how mad we are at Joe Barry for his scheme, because we've been saying all along, we've got all the talent to be able to have a really good defense. So maybe it's just the guys that are going to make this happen, and it's not going to be on the coaching staff that are going to be indicative of the performance we get on the defensive side of the ball.
Independent of the Devondre Campbell injury and, coming back, how critical is it to get Quay Walker back? He left the game. We're not sure where he's at. He's one of my favorite guys to watch. It's him. It's Rashawn. There's a couple guys that you just go, man, I love watching them play. I love how Walker plays for the Packers. So how critical is it to this defense overall? Second year guy who I think is really just growing in to being a leader on the defense. So what say you, Wags?
Yeah, I mean, as well as McDuffie and Wilson, I think have filled in, and this last week with Wilson more so, and McDuffie for a few weeks now. I mean, yeah, we want both of those guys back. I mean, clearly, Campbell. Some might argue that he didn't have his best season last year, 2 years ago. He had a standout All-Pro season. So, both of these, and Quay Walker's coming into his own. I said last week that you could make a good argument that Quay Walker and Rudy Ford have been the most consistent players on the defensive side of the ball, irrespective of Rashawn Gary in the limited snaps that he's had. But just thinking of like more broadly, and nothing changed in terms of my perspective on that after this week. Obviously, Walker got hurt and wasn't able to finish the game, but Rudy Ford had a hell of a game out there. And he's just both of those guys are the ones that seem to be just toughing it out and really stepping up their play. It was nice to see Preston Smith have, I think, one of his best games of the season. I know I was joking around on the Devontae Adams coverage. We don't need to see that anymore, but certainly I think there's opportunities here for impact play. And so Quay Walker in his second season is just standing out on film and on, in the moment for that matter. So, it sounds like he avoided serious injury. So hopefully he's good to go after the bye, but certainly we'll get a better feel for it once they get back into practice next week.
He's so tough, man. I really like him. He's a Packer, right? There's something about him I really like. Anything else on defense? Otherwise, I want to ask you about Anders Carlson because, wow, I mean, we were both concerned, I think, coming out of preseason, Wags, but through 5 weeks, he's been perfect. He's hit the kicks. I think he's played really well under the bright lights. I'm not sure exactly what changed, but man, oh man, I've been really enjoying watching him kick that ball.
Yeah, no, kudos to him. We were wrong. They didn't need competition for him, I guess.
I love being wrong, Wags, when we're talking about negatives.
Yeah.
So
from a special team perspective, honestly, I think the one thing that obviously has been a little bit disappointing has been the coverage and the returns. So, it'd be nice to get that going. We didn't have anything. I think we don't need to remind anyone that we got nothing from the return game for the first 6-7 games last year. And it was really the second half of the season that started to get going. So, maybe Coach Bisaccia can see some adjustments, get some blocking schemes in order, get everyone in line here, get full health, and that can help with special teams consistency as well. And hopefully we can get some breakouts in that return game as we move forward as well, because that can really help a struggling offense if we can get some better field position or even some points on the board from special teams. So
it's good. I mean, and one thing that we never truly know about any specialist, right, is until it gets windy and cold at Lambeau Field. Yeah. But that aside, I really like the young legs we have in Anders Carlson and Daniel Whalen. I think that both of them have been really consistently good so far this year. So excited to see what they can do once it gets cold. But, the early returns, I think going into the bye, I feel very good about where we're at with these two young guys.
Yeah, for sure. So, if they can keep doing that, obviously the main thing is you just don't want special teams to be something that kills you in the game. And aside from giving up the punt return touchdown, I think for the most part, we've been fine there. A few too many penalties for my liking, but nothing that's causing the other team to directly get points on the board from special teams, turnovers, aside from that punt return that they gave up against the Saints. So, but I think we can get better performance from the return game in the second half of the season, and hopefully we can get K9 going and let him get loose for 1 or 2 here soon.
Yes, that'd be good. That'd be good. Wags, we're coming up on 50 minutes. Anything else that you can think of as we do this?
Oh, I thought we were going to do legitimately 25 to 30 tonight, and we just failed once again, and we went deep dive. So you're welcome, and I'm sorry at the same time. But folks, enjoy the bye week. We'll be back not next Monday, but next Thursday to do a preview since we don't have a recap to do this week. So I think that does it for us for tonight. Thanks so much for jumping on and joining us, listening along. As always, be legendary and go Pack
Go Pack Go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack Go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will